welcome to Commander Central episode 129. And today we'll be reading some listener mail. I'm Dana.
I'm Max.
And I'm Chris.
This show's Chris's idea, another one from Chris to do a mailbag episode.
I would like to say it's nice to have my two co-hosts back for a show.
Yeah, right. You gonna be either with me or with Chris lately?
Yeah, I mean, we were together for the whole 12 minutes of our preview cards.
We were.
But
You guys did a nice show last week, by the way. Good job driving, Max.
thank you.
My wife is the one that actually made the comment. We were listening in the car, and she's like, Max talks a lot more when you're not there, just talking constantly. and she wasn't wrong.
Well, it's okay, because about 4 in the morning that show aired, I woke up, I'm like, oh, we got this wrong, and this wrong, and this wrong, and this wrong.
Yeah,
and
he sent me messages about it, and I'm like, oh, yeah.
Well, you guys
Okay.
were reading Lotus Field, and then you mentioned it being hexproof, and then you started talking about it
strip mine
being
it.
strip mine. I'm like, I absolutely would do this. Like, I could imagine myself sitting there and doing the same thing, because once you get going on something,
Right.
I'm like, oh man, someone's gonna absolutely tell them about that on Twitter or Facebook or Slack or something.
everywhere. Everywhere.
And I absolutely would have been part of that had I been here.
And we appreciate the feedback, so thank you,
Yes.
listeners. But the anxiety kicked in at 4:30 in the morning, going just scrap the episode. Let's not air one.
Well, it turned out really well. You guys did a nice job. So, games this week. Max played one.
I played one, and it was a long one.
with Tuvasa, right?
Tuvasa, I was against you with Talrand,
Oh, that's right. Yeah.
and we were playing against a Yarok deck and a first sliver deck that didn't have slivers in it. So
Yeah,
who
yeah.
knows what was going on there?
What?
Yeah, 5-color, good stuff.
Okay.
And I think, Max, you won with Nylea's Colossus, right?
Nylea's Colossus
and Finest Hour.
and Finest Hour, but Thassa was actually the thing that got through, because both the Yarok player and the first sliver player had tons of creatures on the board
Right.
that I couldn't get through because I didn't have trample. I didn't have any enchantments with trample left in my deck, because I was getting that new ninja that when it hits you, you exile the top 2 cards of your library. That was hitting me. I was getting milled. It was just not a good day. But the best part of the entire game was Dana had a very good board presence. He goes, I can kill the Yarok player. It gets to the first sliver player's end of his turn. I go, I'm going to overload Rift. And Dana looks at me and goes, okay. And he lets it go. And the next turn, Dana goes, the Yarok player rebuilds on this turn. And he goes, you should have let me kill him. I'm like, no, because that usually means you're going to kill everybody when I let you kill people.
Well, hey, you won, so I shouldn't question your decision making, because at the end of it all, you came up victorious.
I did. That game went on for another hour, though.
Yeah, it took a while.
You should always question. I mean, have you seen him cast that Will of the Council card or anything like that? So.
He's been pretty good with it
I've
lately.
been doing that better lately.
Yeah, he has been.
I'm 6 for 9 right now.
But I did do this in that game. I cast, I think it's Latnam's Legacy. It's an old card where you shuffle a permanent from your hand into your library. And then at the beginning of the next person's upkeep, you draw 2 cards. So literally somebody like, what is that card? I'm like, it's a draw. It's a cheap draw spell. Makes a Drake. I draw 2 cards on your turn. But it's easy to forget. Ha ha ha. Passed a turn and forgot to draw the 2 cards.
Mishra's Bobble all over again.
I died.
no.
Like it was 12 seconds later and I forgot it, and I didn't realize it till 2 turns later. I'm like, I thought I would have more cards than. I'm like, oh no, I didn't draw my cards off Latnam's Legacy like a professional Magic player that I am.
And I think you realized it because you went and cast another, you cast Ponder or something, so you looked at them and then shuffled your library and oh, I never drew my 2 cards.
Yeah, and I did that. I did though, and I also thought of Chris making fun of me, because later on in a different game, we were down. It was down at the end of the game, and I was at 4 life, and I top deck Read the Bones, and I'm like, why not? Go to 2.
I hope someone bolts you. I really do.
However, I'll say this: if you're gonna die at 4 life or at 2 life, you're probably gonna die at 4 too. For the most part, yes, you're in shock range or you're in Sign and Blood range at 2 versus 4. But I'm like, I might as well see what I can get out of this. And I did. Of course, I died the next turn, but I was probably gonna die anyway. But I'm like, I got 2 life. It's only 2 life. I can afford to give it up. So if you want to reach out to us and tell me how you absolutely would shock me at 2 life, how'd you do that, Chris?
You can find us on Twitter at CMDR Central. You can search us up on Facebook, CMDR Central. You can find us on YouTube, CMDR Central, and you can find us online at cmdrcentral.com.
And you can find us over at teespring.com, where you can purchase all of our sweet CMDR Central merch. And as Chris surprised me last week with the sales contest, so I guess if his Trash Card t-shirt sells more than my Scumbags Unite t-shirt by the end of October, we'll say, because that's about 2 months.
Sure.
Okay.
He gets to pie me in the face.
Oh, yeah, because the first I heard of this pie in the face contest was also as I was listening to the show
Yeah,
with my
me too.
wife in the car, and she's like, so what's going on with that contest? I'm like, this is the first I'm hearing of this as well.
I still don't have what I'm going to do if I win.
It's got to be equivalent to a pie in the face, though.
I might just have you buy me a nice steak dinner.
Okay, that's equivalent to a pie in the face.
I'm fine with that. I like a good steak dinner. No steak sauce, though.
Yeah, that's blasphemy.
Right.
Although I do
Unless it's a
think-
bad steak.
Although I
Yeah.
do think I would enjoy videotaping the pie in the face. Watching you eat steak is less interesting. It's much less fun to post on
Either
Twitter.
way, I get to eat.
Right, that's true. Right, these are all involve Max getting food in the face. Clearly, he's hungry right now. I think we have some other contests. Speaking of winning and losing, we have a Twitter contest and a Patreon contest.
We do for Patreon this month. If you support us by the end of August, or start supporting us by the end of August, especially with our new reward levels, you'll get entered in to win the altered Lord Windgrace card and a copy of the real card, so you know what it does. And that was done by local player Ben Johnston. For Twitter, we are giving away a signed copy of the Legends card Great Defender, and it's signed by Mark Poole. So just find that tweet and then follow us and retweet it, and you'll get entered no matter what. So those are our two contests this month. But we do have one new patron to announce. And unfortunately, his screen name is Aaron Rodgers Sucks. And for those who don't know about sports ball, Aaron Rodgers is the quarterback for our Green Bay Packers here in the glorious state of Wisconsin. And I feel like Chris has comments now and concerns.
I have so many comments. I'm going to hold off on this because I want to know where this gentleman or lady, because I'm not sure who it is.
Who's trolling? Somebody's trolling you.
Yep. Where they're from. Because if they're from Minnesota, oh, it sounds like Donkey Kong.
Or Chicago.
Yeah, if they're from Illinois, it sounds like a Donkey Kong. If
Or
they're,
Detroit, Michigan.
well, if they're from Michigan, I just
The
don't care.
NFC
'cause-
North. If they're from the NFC North, you're done.
Now, I'm not a big Packers fan, but I cheer for Aaron Rodgers for one reason alone. I don't like Brett Favre. So I'm always cheering for Aaron Rodgers to break his records. It's a spite cheer.
But there, we're not a football podcast.
Yes, we're not going to start branching
And-
off into that as well.
And we're not a hockey podcast, but that's another about month and a half away, and then we might be a hockey podcast.
Hockey starts that soon.
Yeah, preseason
Not
starts like
far,
at
yeah.
the end, middle of September.
So right around the time football starts.
Yep. Full season starts like the first week of October, I
Go
think.
Packers.
Go Ducks.
Go Ducks. Quack, quack.
All right. Any final business here before we move on to the mailbag?
The mailbag. Let's crack it open.
Chris came up with this idea of 4th of July, I believe.
Well, we were
As we were getting killed by Star of Extinction.
and drinking beers.
And Max is like, the next day I messaged me, he's like, Chris got a couple ideas for shows. He wants to do a mailbag one. I'm like, we just recorded one for the EDH Recast.
Like 2 days before that.
Well, let's wait a couple. It's a good idea. We should do it. Actually, it makes sense. But like, let's wait a couple of weeks, and then something came up, and so we've now
So-
pushed it far enough
Yes.
that it's there's enough of a gap just accidentally
So-
anyway.
So we put the questions out to our community members on our chat via Slack, which you can join by joining our Patreon.
Yep.
We also posted the question out on Twitter, so we got a ton of responses.
We did, yeah.
got 50 plus questions after I kind of combined. A lot of people asked similar questions, so I said, hey,
5.5 pages on my Word document.
yes. I combined it, so like this person asked it in Slack, but it was also asked by so-and-so people on Twitter, just so everybody kind of gets recognition. So we have over 50 questions. I don't think we're going to get through them all today, but we have enough to do another one of these next month.
Yeah.
And before we start, I'm going to tell everyone that I did not read these questions ahead of time. So everything I say is going to be right off the cuff, as if we were talking face to face.
All right.
So.
I mean, I did read these 2 weeks ago when I prepared the show notes, and then we ended up getting a preview card, and I think that's what took
Yeah,
the
that's
spot
what it
of
was.
this episode. Again, thank you, Wizards, for that.
Yes, absolutely. That was super cool.
But so here we are, finally getting around to the mailbag
Yeah.
show.
So our first question here comes to us from Cable. What aspect of EDH do you consider the most fun?
I like winning with commander damage.
That's what you like the most about
That's
it?
what I like the most.
Okay. You do a good bit of that, I guess, now that I
It's
think about
always
it.
my plan A.
Yeah. All right. How about you, Chris? What's most fun for you?
The politics, by
Oh,
far.
really? Okay.
I love it. Just, I have 1 mana open.
What am I
One
going to
white
do?
mana. What am I going to do? You're going to attack me? Really? Really? Okay, I take it. I guess I don't have it.
I like that myself. I actually, this week, in a game, I should have mentioned in our game we played stories, I actually bluffed a Swords to Plowshares for multiple turns. And at one point, I even said to the person, like, I could be bluffing that. And he's like, I don't know. That's a really good bluff. And I top decked it 2 turns later and actually got to use it then. So I didn't even have to give up the bluff. I actually bluffed until I didn't have to bluff it anymore. I like that part of it too. My favorite part is I like deck building. I like brewing, and I like finding weird decks. I like finding this commander and figuring out, okay, I could do this other weird thing that I don't think I've ever seen anybody do with it. It's not designed to do that. Veil of the Nightclad is not designed to be played with colorless creatures that you swing through. And then after trying to do that, I then discovered, okay, well, it also works. Her ability then works good because artifact creatures, there's a lot of things that make tokens, and there's a lot of sack outlets, and I can also play her ability into that. So I like finding that kind of stuff, or like my Kresh deck. Kresh, most people build Kresh as some kind of a reanimator or sacrifice thing where you play, Fleshbag Marauder kind of creatures, and everyone sacrifices stuff, and Kresh gets huge. I like the idea of using him as a fling commander, flinging big things, because then he gets big, but not having to actually swing through with him, that was fun. So for me, that's what I like. I like brewing a deck and finding this weird kind of niche thing that it wasn't intended to do and making it into a workable deck.
For sure.
Next question we got was from Dean Goody. Would you want to be on the rules committee or the CAG, and why?
My first question is, what's the keg?
The Commander Advisory Group, which
Okay.
is
Like the subcommittee.
yeah.
Okay.
So they don't actually make decisions, but they do voice their opinions on different things. So what do you guys think of that, Chris?
Yeah, I don't want to be on the rules committee. Heck yeah.
I don't. Not at all.
So why would you not want to be on it?
Well, let's see. After
Aside from Sheldon getting death threats.
that would be the big one. But like,
I would
just,
love to see those come in the
just
mail.
like-
I'd be like, bring it, homie, bring it.
being a content creator has gotten to the point where I've gotten a little bit of thicker skin because
Sure.
you got to deal with comments
You
and
do.
people saying,
You
"Hey,
bet.
you got Lotus Field wrong
Right.
for 10 straight minutes." But like, I don't know if I could be okay with making a decision that impacts thousands of players' gameplay and being okay with the feedback I get, whether it's positive or negative. Like,
Right.
that's a lot of responsibility to make sure this a format
Sure.
that is and isn't sanctioned by Wizards viable and healthy. Like, that's a lot of responsibility that I don't think I could deal with. I mean, I
It's a lot of
don't.
responsibility with you're not getting paid to do that.
No.
There's no stipend for that job. There's no health insurance. There's no, other than you get some fame, which mostly results in people being mean to you on
Right.
Twitter. There's not a lot of upside to it. I would not want to. It would be an honor to have someone say, "Would you like to be on the CAG?" I would like to be asked to be on the CAG and then turn it down. That's the dream. The prestige of somebody wanting you to be on it. But I think being on it,
Oof.
there's just no upside, and there's just all people being mad at you. And any decision you make is wrong, kind of. Like,
That just sounds like life in general.
I was about to make a really bad personal joke.
but none of us, all of us agree Paradox Engine should have got banned
Yes.
for the format as a whole. But I understand for CEDH players where the way they play the game, it wasn't a problem. I get that. That makes complete sense to me. So you are making a decision for the game as a whole, but you're going to screw some small group of people over. So no matter what way you do it, you're leaving somebody out in the cold, and they're going to take that personally and be offended. And it's just a lose-lose. I feel like.
I kind of equate it to do you save the one life or do you save the million lives
Right.
type of philosophy.
I think it's the trolley problem.
Depends on the one life I'm saving. That's what I got to
Yeah,
say about
true.
that.
But I guess.
In the big picture, that's kind of what
Yeah.
everybody
You
uses.
have that's a decision you have to make.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I think we would not want to participate in that.
Chickens. I'd ban Cyclonic Rift in a heartbeat.
I do think
No, blasphemy.
man, I don't
Everybody
know.
be quiet. Next question.
Next question is from Carlos. What's the worst interaction with that guy you've ever had in a game? Whether it's stomping someone, being rude, etc.
Ooh, there's a bunch of them.
Okay.
I think probably the worst overall, it's not one specific incident, is those people that, it's when that guy walks into your pod, new player to the shop or whatever, and said, hey, it's a brand new deck, I haven't really played it much, it's pretty low key, and then, turn 4, he wins the game because he just dropped his entire deck on the table, and it's like, oh yeah, it's my first time playing. It's like, no, it's not. You bold-faced lied to our face.
The specific example of that I can think of was a couple of years ago, and I think it was you and I.
It was.
Against this Maelstrom Wielder, right after the Maelstrom Wielder deck came out, the 4-color
The
ones.
Yidris one, yep.
Or Yidris, yep. And he said, and the person said, yeah, it's my Yidris deck. It's just brand new. I haven't played it. I've hardly made any
It's
changes.
right out of the box.
And it absolutely was. It had the full, all the dual lands you could run, and
The wheels.
Wheel of
and
Fortune. There was, I don't think there was a Time Twister, but there was definitely Time Spiral. There was all, it was a $5,000 deck that he clearly misrepresented as what it was. In addition to misrepresenting it, though, as we're getting our decks out, Max and I are having this conversation. Oh, well, let's play our newest, weakest deck then to make sure. So he
Yep.
heard us having this conversation.
Here comes keyword Odric coming
Right,
out.
yeah.
And
And I think I played Reki because I had just put it together.
yeah.
So it was pretty weak at that point. I didn't even know if it was any good, so it was brand new. So let's play our newest decks that aren't tuned at all.
Here we are 2 years later, and Reki's still around, but keyword
Right.
Odric's gone.
But at the time, it was definitely my weakest deck, mono green, mono white, and so he let us have that conversation and then played that deck. And then we ran into him at a shop a couple years, fairly recently,
Yeah,
6
within
months
the
or so
last
ago.
year.
And one of us must have, I think it was Darksteel Mutation.
Yep.
We hit, I don't know what card it was with Darksteel Mutation, and he brought it over. I played you guys a couple years back. There was, I think, some hard feelings about the power level, and I was like, I didn't say anything to him. I'm like, no, there was hard feelings because you lied about your power level. It wasn't a mismatch. It was you, but I didn't. I just said, okay, all right, thanks. So that was the one that jumps out at me. How about you, Chris?
It would have to be that guy that you borrow a deck to. And as he's playing it, he goes, why are you playing this card? There are better cards than this. You shouldn't be playing this card.
The entire time.
Yes.
Yep.
I remember that particular player as well. That one kind of
That's
jumps out at
probably
me.
the worst that I've ever had. I mean, I can deal with salt. I can deal with people
Sure.
being dumb, all that kind of stuff. But when it's like that, when you're being generous, lending out a deck,
Sure.
that's what really sticks with me.
I have one more, and I have to be cautious about how I phrase this to not sound like a jerk. It was playing at a event, and it was a paid environment, so some people were playing competitive decks, and I was prepared for that going in. That wasn't a problem. But we had a situation where a player was playing a Teferi Chainveil deck that he didn't know how to play. So it was
Ooh.
clearly a borrowed deck, and he kind of knew, okay, I need to get Teferi out and do this to get my combo, but he didn't know what that chain was, so he's trying to figure things out. So it turned into a situation where we're just sitting there for 20 minutes as he's trying to figure out what he can do, and he's doing things, but still it's taking forever. And because it was a competitive kind of situation, you didn't want to drop because if everyone died simultaneously, you got a certain amount of points. But
Yep.
if you just drop, you got nothing. So you had to sit it out. So we had to sit out and watch this guy fumble on this deck for a long, long, long time. And the worst part about it is, and maybe I sound like a heartless jerk for saying this, the guy was in a wheelchair. So then I felt like I couldn't even glare at him and be like, come, then I couldn't even roll my eyes and be like, hurry up. I had to just sit there. I felt because that sucks. You're in a wheelchair. That's a bad deal. That's awful.
You treat those people just the same as you would any other person in the world.
I couldn't give him the side eye. I had to just sit there and be like, dude, it's been 22 minutes and you haven't figured out how to win this game.
At that point, you just look at him and be like, you want me to do it for you?
Actually, man, I wanted to. My internal brain is having those conversations, but we just all waited it out. And everyone at the table I could see was doing the same thing. Everyone's like, we can't say anything. We just have to wait. And everyone just waited in silence as he tried to figure out this Chainveil combination.
Everyone is so much nicer than I am. I don't understand this.
I mean, yeah, I have no comment because I was there for that. I remember how upset you were that day.
Yeah, that was a little salty. So those would be the two jumps out at me. What MTG accessories do you think you've splurged the most on? Sleeves, mats, binders, that kind of thing.
Ooh, I think it comes down to two things. Like, I'm a big fan of the Ultimate Guard, boulders, archives, stuff like that. So, card protection right there is huge. Archives are what, $35 a piece? I currently have 2 of them. I think I've bought 4 total in my lifetime. But sleeves, I think, is where I spend my most money because I like to re-sleeve my deck, inners and outers, 2 times a year.
Yeah.
Don't even get me on the subject of sleeves.
That adds up.
It does.
Well, you've also bought some art, though, kind of things, too. You have some prints up that you've framed, things like that.
I do have a couple. Noah Bradley is my favorite MTG artist.
Yep.
I do have a couple of his prints. I have the Expedition Sacred Foundry, and then the moat he did for the Legacy Cube on
Yep.
MTGO. I have both those up in my house, framed and everything.
How about you, Chris?
Sleeves, by far.
Just buying sleeves constantly.
You gotta think, being a competitive player, every tournament I go to is brand new sleeves.
I suppose you can't risk it. It's
Yep.
not worth screwing around.
Yep, that's what, $11 a box of
Yeah.
sleeves plus your
You buy a
perfect fit.
case at a time.
But even then, even at that,
A
it
case
still
lasts
adds
you
up.
a season.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I've never I've looked at those really nice, the nice wooden deck boxes that you can get, the custom made ones, but I've never actually pulled the trigger because I think it would bug me that I have that one deck in one type of case and the rest in a different one. So that's the main reason I've never pulled the trigger on that. But I've looked at a few of those. I've bought sleeves. I actually finally bought a nice binder last year. In the past, I've always just bought a cheap binder, and I actually did a little bit of research. I think the professor did a video on a bunch of different binders, so I watched his video. I'm like, okay, I think it was an Ultimate Guard.
Yep.
One was the one I liked the most. It was a side loader. It had a zipper on it. It had a nice stiff.
I use the BCW side loader
Okay,
zipper
yep.
ones. The 4-pocket ones, though.
Yeah, because you can have a full play set of cards then.
Yep.
It's nice for that kind of thing. I wanted one to fit in the backpack for trading is what I was looking at. So I actually bought a nice zippered binder that I spent, $30 or $40 on. That's probably the biggest one for me. I need to get a frame for my uncut sheet
Same here.
from War of the Spark, and that's going to be something. And I asked my wife tonight, I'm like, so we can put that up in the living room? And she's like, no, no, I don't want it in the living room.
I thought one of you guys was going to, we were going to do like a whole system or something, and then one night when we do video, we were going to get just plastered, and our whole video for the week was going to be us with scissors cutting one of those sheets
This is
off.
the guy who shouldn't be drinking due to health concerns anymore.
So let's just add scissors to the mix and see what happens.
You really want my drunk butt running around with scissors?
I've also wanted to get one of the big cards that you can get, like the huge, not just the oversized.
From, like, the
big,
prize wall?
Yeah, the prize wall ones. I don't know what it would get, but at some point I wouldn't mind getting a nice big prize wall card.
Cancel.
Yeah, there we go. Right. Yeah, after having to draft it. And I know he asked for non-card stuff, but I did last year. I picked up an Illusionary Mask. It's a card that I always thought was super cool back in the day. It basically lets you morph stuff. Not quite, but I think it's.
So you're ready for the commander
Yeah, I'm ready
decks.
for the commander deck. But I always wanted an Illusionary Mask back in the day, and I was like, this was right when all the buyouts were happening, and it was still at like $100. And I'm like, I have no use for it. I am never going to play it. It's a card I've always wanted. I'm just going to grab it because it's going to annoy me if it spikes up to $200, and then I still want one. So I just flat out bought that for no reason with no use for it, just to have.
I think probably, aside from sleeves that I've done, it's probably like the $150 I dropped on that backpack.
Oh yeah,
The Ammonite.
Yep. And I love that backpack. Oh, it is heaven.
And you just bought a new backpack recently too.
I bought one. It's the one they kind of sell at GPs in the Legion
Yeah.
shop. I really like it, just because the Ammonite sold out so fast.
Yeah.
I like it. It fits up to 3 archives if I squeeze that third one in there. But tons of extra pockets. It's really comfortable. I just like it overall.
Cool. What do we have next here?
Next one comes from Seeb.
Oh, yeah.
What are your top 5 favorite EDH cards and top 5 hated cards?
Oh man.
Oh, this is probably
like
why.
on a grift.
This is probably why we should have read the questions first.
This is one of the ones I did read. I did give them all a glance, and I was like, oh, I'm glad I read this one. I'll do mine first to give you guys a moment to think here. For hated ones, the first one I'll say is Insurrection.
I'm surprised.
And
not.
I did just mention this. I was talking
Go
about it
back
on
to our
Twitter.
earlier episodes,
Yeah.
and you will hear him complain about it all
I
the
do
time.
not think it's an overpowered card at all. It is completely fair for 8 mana. Trip red is tough to hit too. It's a legit card. There's been a bunch of different games, not like once or twice. There's been multiple games where I've played against somebody who I've watched them keep a 2-lander and struggle for 5 or 6 turns, and then they eventually hit a Thran Dynamo, and they're like, oh, cool, I'm at 8 mana, and they top deck and go, Insurrection? And everyone else is tapped out, and you're like, oh, we've just spent like 8 or 9 turns playing Magic, and they've spent the 8 turns sitting there, and they just like, so I'm going to kill you and you now? I'm like, no, come on. So like that is one that just completely salts me. So that's one I hate, and extra turn spells in general. I could list 5 extra turn spells, Expropriate being one, but I just can't stand extra turns, particularly if they are just spend mana, take an extra turn. It bothers me less if it's like on a Madomi or something where like the person has to do a thing to do it, but I can't stand extra turns just because I hate sitting there watching someone do a thing.
Gotcha.
So those are my hated ones. For favorites, I like Knight's Whisper because I just like the card. It's 2 mana, draw 2 cards. It's exactly what I want in a card. It's efficient and clean and simple. I like Glyph of the Trader. I like the art on it. I like my deck. I think it's an interesting lore character. She's somebody who was a hero in the first set, and in the storyline now she's hated despite having done nothing wrong. She just got captured and completed, and everyone assumes she's the bad guy. And she is a bad guy, but it's not her fault. That's a tragic story. I like that. I love Gate to Phyrexia. It's an old card from Antiquities. It's a black enchantment, and I just remember when I first saw it, when I knew nothing about the Magic storyline, there's a there's a line of text in the bottom. The flavor text just says, "The warm rain of grease on my face made it clear I'd entered Phyrexia." And just the thought of Phyrexia being this place where it rained grease is so disgusting. That's like such a disgusting visual. But it's not it's not like it rained blood where it's like, okay, that's
I can have you witness the rain of grease for me.
underneath the car.
Yeah, let's go work on a car.
But like if it was blood or like something like that,
Right.
that's so over the top. But like grease is such a weirdly specific thing for a world that's like a machine world. That's so, like that made me so interested in the Magic lore behind Phyrexia just from that description alone. So that's one I'm a huge fan of. I love Sudden Spoiling because you can do 50 things with it, and every one of them is good. It kind of lets you show off to a degree. And I like Sylvan Library because I like it's just a good card. That's the best turn 2 play you can make. And hey, it does that thing where I pay life to draw cards, which I'm a fan of too.
Yeah.
So those would be my favorites. Yeah. How about you, Max?
So my hated cards, I'll agree with you. Extra turn spells, specifically Expropriate.
Yeah.
Nexus of Fate is fine, I think, but they're not fun. I agree. You sit there and watch someone do something, and maybe they don't even do something. And watching that person take the extra turn and then draw, play a land, and go is just a waste of time.
Sure.
Second is the hate bear-esque cards, so your Thalias. In a multiplayer pod, it leads to people just not being able to play the game, which I don't like. In a competitive sense,
Makes sense.
like
absolutely.
if I played Modern, I would just play hate bears because I'm a scumbag.
Sure.
And just like lazy cards, Insurrection, Cyclonic Rift is on both my lists. I hate it because it is so easy to cast, but I love it because it is Cyclonic Rift.
Right.
So those would be my hated. My favorite ones are Dragon Lord Jamoka, just because it was my first really cohesive EDH deck that I've had now for 4 years.
So you built yourself off an idea you had that
Yes.
you wanted to do.
Yep. Second would be the new print and the new art of Horizon Canopy, because it was done by Noah Bradley.
Yep.
And I just love his art. I love the sun just peeking through the horizon. And Chris is giving me the stink eye because he likes the original better.
The original's pretty great too.
True. I love the Pact of cards.
Okay.
Because even though they are pretty dang powerful, if you forget that upkeep trigger, you lose the game.
Yeah.
Doesn't work that way anymore.
Really?
You can't forget it.
No. Unless you play your turn out and tap out and pass the turn, you can rewind it all the way up back to the upkeep and play for it.
Really?
Judge ruling, you cannot lose the game to it anymore.
Well, that's boring.
Right?
Boo. Okay. And then this might be either 4 or 5, but the the fourth one would be the voting cards from the conspiracy sets minus expropriate, because they had a really cool political aspect to the game. That's a lot of fun. And then finally would be the partners with mechanic, not just partner, because it made the partner mechanic a little more viable. Like, just partner means you can just play the two best ones and do whatever.
Right.
They don't really jive. Where partners with from Battle Bond, you know, Regan and Krav, they work together. You know, the uncommon ones, the Dragon and Night Lady, they all kind of work together, where just partner is I can just pick any two and just play good stuff.
Sure. How about you, Chris?
My top 5 hated cards. Soul Ring. Soul Ring. Soul Ring. Soul Ring. And Cyclonic Rift. I am not a fan of Soul Ring, and this might just be biased on my opinion with it, but it's meta warping to the point where everyone plays it. And that's probably the biggest reason I don't like it.
Yes.
No, don't get me wrong. It is a phenomenal card.
Yes.
Same with Cyclonic Rift. I just don't like them.
Okay.
Now, my top 5 favorite cards. We'll start with Sliver Queen. By far, probably my favorite card. Outpost Siege, because I'm a red mage, and that just does everything that I want it to do. What?
I'm trying to guess because you just said Red Mage, so I feel like that's the rest of your list.
Oh. And then my next 3 are all going to be the same card, because I'm in love with this card. It's not actually an EDH card, but Sarah Angel. It's by far my most favorite card in the world. Wow. I collect them. It's just, if I see one, I usually buy it.
Okay.
No Faithless Looting.
It is a wonderful card, but right now I'm on the... I hate Faithless Looting because Hogak is running around and crushing my hopes and dreams.
Gotcha.
I was waiting for Faithless Looting and or Lightning Bolt somewhere in there.
Yeah.
All right. Proggy Boogie, sorry. What first got you into playing EDH?
I'll start.
These two hooligans over here.
That's true.
Actually.
I started playing Magic with a bunch of people I worked with at GameStop years ago. And one day, someone's like, hey, I found this cool format called EDH. And I think that was right before, like, Commander was, like, the name. And so we all tried it, and most of everybody didn't like it.
Okay.
So I'm like, this is cool. And then I met one of my friends I play volleyball with. I was wearing, like, a Boros t-shirt. And he's like, oh, you play Magic? I'm like, yeah. He goes, what do you play? I'm like, well, we play a lot of kitchen table, but otherwise we just tried this thing called Commander, and I love it. And he goes, yeah, that's all I play. And so I started playing with him, which led to us going to the first game shop we ever played at, where I met Dana.
Yep.
And that'll just lead into how Chris started playing EDH.
Yeah. Because I just met you like hooligans sitting at a table one day wondering why your decks were so big. It made no sense to me whatsoever.
And the next week you showed up with slivers.
I did.
Well, and my story is similar to Max's, although way back when I first played Magic, so like when I'm in high school and we're talking when Revised was out and stuff like that, my friend who taught me, taught us, we played kitchen table, but he's like, we should also build Highlander decks. I'm like, what's a Highlander deck? So that was a concept even back in the day. It wasn't Elder Dragon Highlander. You didn't have a commander, but you just built a 100-card deck with no repeats other than basic lands. So we all did that. And then when the actual Legends then came out, again, we didn't have commanders, but we all got the Legends from Legends for our decks. I was playing Jund, so I had, is it Victus was a Jund?
Yes.
Dragon? And one of my friends who had a Bant deck, it wasn't called Bant at the time, but he put the Arcades one in there, and I think we had 4 friends that all had different 3-color combinations.
Is that your same friend that we watched
Yes.
shuffle a deck with no sleeves, with like a Tundra and other stuff in there?
There was a moat in there. I think there was an Arabian Nights Library of Alexandria, and that was him playing that same deck from way back in the day.
Okay.
So fast forward to 20 years later, when a friend of mine at work got me playing again, and he played, and he's like talking me into it, and I had been playing on the iPad a little bit, whatever that game was, Duel of the Planeswalkers, I think. So I bought a few cards, made a kitchen table deck, and we played that out a few times, and he had one of the precons, I think it was Kalia, and he's like, well, you should start making a 100-card deck. We'll try that. And I'm like, I used to play with 100-card decks. I'm like, understand that concept. And he's like, yeah, no repeat. I'm like, I totally get that idea. And then he explained the commander idea to me. I'm like, okay, well, cool. I can then, that's easy enough to do. I built the first commander deck, and the two of us played each other 1v1 with these big unwieldy decks. And then we decided to go to the shop in town and see if anybody else was playing. And we went in, and he's like, nobody here plays commander. I'm like, okay, well, we're just going to start showing up on, I think it was Wednesday then.
No.
Was it Tuesday still?
It's always been
Okay.
Tuesday.
So we went in and just started showing up every Tuesday. And then at some point, Max came in with the friend that he mentioned.
Yep.
And
We had 4 people.
we had 4 people to play like a real multiplayer Commander. And that was when I realized I should run board wipes. Because we weren't doing any of those kind of things then.
The only reason I know it was Tuesday is because we played volleyball on Wednesdays.
You did? Okay.
So
And then I distinctly remember the dude chewing, wearing the camouflage baseball cap, who came in. You were probably dressed like you are now, with like the
More
sleeves,
than likely.
the sleeves cut off your shirt. He came over, and I was like, "That guy does not look like a Magic player." And you're watching us play, and you're like, "Oh, I never thought. What are you guys doing here?" And we're explaining it, and you're like, "I'll be back next week." And you came back
Yep.
next week with that sliver deck, and you were ready to.
I had always been a competitive 60-card player,
We
and then that
explained-
looked like a good way to blow off steam
Yeah.
but still play the game.
So basically, the first 5 people playing Commander in this town regularly, and we're 3 of those 5, and we still play together. And now, like this week at the shop, we had
36
So,
people.
Yeah.
There was a lot of people in there.
So that's every Tuesday now. That's kind of from us just showing up and playing.
3
And
shops
that's where-
later.
3 shops later. That's where it's at now. So
Speaking of that, so off on a tangent, I was out playing Pokemon Go last night. Walked past the Plus.
Yep.
I really want to go back and try that food again and see if it was as good as I remember or not.
It's not.
Okay.
there's a restaurant that you see by the old shop we used to play. We used to go there every night before we play Magic and
Yep.
get a beer and pizza or something.
That might be later in this show where we have to talk about this.
Okay. All right.
Interesting.
All right.
To be continued.
Yep. So next we have a question from Dan Krause. Please explain the Vegas rotisserie draft for charity and explain why Dan is the underdog and deserves all the donations and extra.
I'll handle the second part of that question. Dan is not the underdog because he has raised the most money for the Extra Life Foundation out of all 8 of us.
And he stole a card from me and got
Yeah.
an extra draft pick as a result. From
to the
it.
point where his budget has increased by, I think, our starting budget of $200.
He's twice as much money as what he started at this
So
point.
he is not an underdog. He is a scumbag, but it's for the children.
Yes.
I do really like this idea of what's going on, and I applaud Dan for doing this.
No, yeah, it's
Yeah, he's really worked hard at it. And the guys at Commander Social, so to backtrack to what it is, and we've mentioned it before, but they actually did a whole show on it last week, I think,
yeah.
where they talked about the rotisserie draft. Basically, it's like fantasy football. You start off drafting some commanders, and then you just draft cards, and once a card's gone, it's gone. So not everyone can run Cyclonic Rift. The person who drafts Rift gets Rift, and that's where it ends.
For sure.
So we're doing this draft, building,
$200 decks.
$200 decks. So there's a budget too. So $200 cap. We're building these decks, and we're going to play them in Vegas, and we've raised money for charity. So that's what it is. So I've just explained it, and we've now refuted the notion that Dan is the underdog because he is not.
He is no longer the underdog.
So yeah, it's pretty cool, and I think we're going to try to do one locally here at some point as
Yes.
well. Is the plan?
Ryan and Zach from Commander Social, Zach told me today, yeah, just take the spreadsheet off the public drive and delete everybody's sheets and set it up for whoever you want. And so, I think come the new year, I'm gonna host one locally. So it should go faster than
We need to get a big whiteboard and set it up in your living room. And
we're gonna use the TV. Put a
even
spreadsheet
better.
on the
Nice.
TV.
Even better.
Everybody bring a tablet or a laptop and let's do this.
That's a good idea. I like it.
I already have mine set. It's been in my mind forever.
Yeah, because it was supposed to be my deck.
Okay, so the next one we have here is from Henry. Why do you think EDH resonates with so many players, and what do you think was the tipping point that pushed it from a grassroots format to something that's formally played and supported by Wizards?
I think part of it is the fact that it gave maybe not your hyper competitive players, but the people who attend their weekly FNMs or maybe their store tournaments every couple times a month. It gave them something to do with their cards that rotated versus trying to finagle like, oh, rotation happens in 2 weeks, I got to sell all this stuff off, and then stick in your shop with it or something. But it's where like, cool, I have all these leftover Kaladesh cards that I can't use in standard, I can't use in, none of them are really played in modern, except for a few maybe. So it gave them something to do with all this bulk they have.
Yeah.
And I mean, legendary creatures have been printed since Legends. Granted, it's way more supported now by WotC, but it just gives people to have something to do with all their cards. On the other side of that coin is that new player that walks in the shop learns how to play with an intro deck, they like the game, but they don't want to do draft. They don't want to play standard because standard might only be 2 or 3 decks right now. Oh, cool. My friends play this format called Commander. I can go buy a pre-con once a year for $40, and I'm set.
Yep.
I think it's just a way to introduce either new players to the format or keep those competitive players that get sick of playing competitive when the formats start to suck, playing something different for a while.
It also lets you play fun, splashy cards that maybe that are strong in Commander, but that might not be good enough for other formats. Oracle of Moldiah is a fantastic card that's not good enough for Modern or Legacy, obviously, or Vintage. So but it's a really cool card that makes you feel like $1 million when you play it, except for there's no other place to play that. So it's also the intent, but people discovered, oh, I can run, we mentioned it in a deck tech show that we did that hasn't aired yet, Giant Adaphage in a green deck. Giant Adaphage is a super cool card that absolutely can't get played anywhere. You can play it in Commander. Terastodon is a card that people play in Commander that you don't get a chance to play anywhere else because of the casting cost. It's absolutely a house in Commander games. So I think people also really found out that's really attractive to people, that they can play these oddball big haymaker cards that do real legit things, but they're not fast enough for actual competitive formats. Henry also asked, what do you see as the biggest challenges for EDH in the near future and long term?
What do you think, Chris?
The long term is going to be the price.
Yeah.
I hate bringing up finance and all that stuff, but the way the prices of cards have been going up, in 10 years it's going to be hard.
Yeah.
Because people like us who have been playing since the beginning, or early on, we have all these cards, but it's hard for a new player to go out and buy a $200 Mana Crypt.
Yeah.
That kind of stuff. And then you're going to show off when you're playing. And
Well, and I remember being annoyed when I picked up a Savannah for my Sigarda deck. I'm like, I can't believe I spent $52 on it.
oh, wow.
I can't believe I'm spending $50 in the Savannah. That's $200. We say we got in when it was cheap.
Yep.
And we didn't. It was still expensive then, but it's crazy expensive now.
Yes.
Well, not even just cards that are on the reserve list are really powerful cards like Mana Crypt, but something like Blood Artist. It's an uncommon. It's $4.
Yeah. Well, we've mentioned this card enough times. Mystic Remora is a great card, and once upon a time, we saw Mystic Remoras all the time at 20 cents a pop or something. It's a $7 or $8
it's a
card now
$7
because it gets
card.
played so much. So even that kind of thing has really popped up, and that's a problem.
The other thing I think might cause an issue in the long term is the lack of bringing new stuff into the game. It's going to become stale, where they have to come up with new mechanics, and that's just Magic in general.
Right, it's always a problem.
Yes.
Yeah.
The one I think that's going to be an issue too is power creep, and this is a question I actually then went and looked up. So I'm glad I did some research here. The original Commander decks came out in 2011.
Yep.
The average CMC, as I went through and checked, of all the commanders combined and divided by the number was 4.93.
I was going to say, so wasn't that like Prash and Thraxamundar?
No, this would be like Kalia and
okay,
And
yeah,
Kalia was
before that.
cheap that year because there was there was the Sultai one that
Mimeoplasm.
Mimeoplasm is in there. Who is the Gorgon that draws you? You have no maximum.
Damia.
Damia Sage of Stone is 7 mana. There was all the dragons from Time Spiral and from Invasion that are 6 mana each.
Yep.
There was Vishkal Blood Arbiter who's 8. There was Malfagor who was 8. There's a bunch of 7 and 8 drops in that list that year. So it was just short of 5. This year's commanders that are now all out, I went through, 4.13.
Wow.
And that's including the big one is a 6 mana one that you don't pay 6 mana for because it's Phyrexian.
Right.
So removing that from the list, it probably goes down sub 3.
And Wizard says they were never going to print Phyrexian mana cards again.
Not in standard.
So that kind of thing, I'm that kind of power creep, but even little things even if you're not trying to make your deck more powerful necessarily and they release a generous gift that you replaced your Oblation with, your deck just got better. And when they release that Prismatic Vista that you replace your Evolving Wilds with, you don't even have to be intentionally trying to add new combos to your deck. If you just do those small scale upgrades like that, but you do it once a set or once every other set and do 5 cards a year that way, that's a big deal when you extrapolate that out over 2 or 3 years, when you've replaced a third of your deck with cards that presumably are being replaced because they're better. You know, every white deck that got Smothering Tithe is better now.
Yes.
So, you know, every red deck, we just got a new red draw spell in this Commander product where it's basically a better version of Icon Impulse. You exile the top 3 cards of your library, and you have until the end of next turn to play them.
So it's like a light up the stage almost,
Yeah.
or something like that.
Without the spectacle cost. But then it has flashback, and if you can't pay the flashback cost, you don't need to pay the mana cost on those cards.
Right. Okay, I like that card.
But like I'll put that in every Boros deck, I think. So like again, every Boros deck has gotten better just from those kind of cards, or
I don't know how much better they've gotten,
Yeah.
but
but they have gotten better.
yes.
Or even things like this, like when we started doing the podcast, there was the Command Zone and Commander In, and I don't even know, maybe Commander's Brew was out. I don't even remember.
Commander's
I think they probably
Brew,
were.
the occasional like Professor video on Commander.
But that was probably it.
Yeah, there were probably 10 total, counting us.
Now, if you want to listen to Commander shows, you could listen to 20 Commander shows probably of different forms.
I mean, I think I have 8 in my podcast feed, including us.
Yeah. Or watch gameplay from guys like MTG Lexicon. I think Legendary Creature does a gameplay video show now.
Yep.
There's Mudsta does gameplay videos. Game nights now exist in a way it didn't used to.
Commander Versus.
yeah.
Everybody, yeah.
So EDH Rec as a resource now giving you like just deck lists, or like there was one deck builder that you could look at for decks and which was tapped out, and now there's 4 or 5 really good ones that even have stats and stuff.
Or MTG Salvation.
Yeah. So there's like all these things out there now. There's all these resources in addition to decks that are getting more powerful that are going to tweak the power level up. And I don't want to say that's a bad thing necessarily, but it's definitely going to change the game, and already has. So I think that's going to be a challenge at least. I'm not saying it's bad. It's just going to be something that people have to deal with.
Yeah.
Any other things on this one for you guys?
Nope.
We have one from Matthias here. What or when was the moment that made you go, oh, this is a new format I want to try out, to you being hooked?
So for me, it was, like I said earlier, I started with a group of, 6 or 8 people playing kitchen table. Just these are the cards we bought. We don't care if they're in standard or modern. We just played 60 card decks, followed the no more than 4 copy rule, whatever.
Yep.
And we all kind of did our own thing, but it was all pretty much the same. Someone had a life gain deck. What you kind of already see in EDH.
Sure.
But then when we moved to Commander or EDH, everybody's like, it's so. And I'm sitting here like, I love the restraints that I can only have a single copy. I have to stay in X colors. And back then, there weren't many 5-color commanders. You had your slivers.
Yeah.
And that's about it.
Yeah.
Horde of Notions.
Progenitus probably.
Progenitus would have been around.
Aura, but
and Child. But there weren't a lot like we get now. We get one probably like every set now.
Yeah.
So it really made you really be like, cool, you really identified with a color pair or a monocolor or even 3-color if you found one of those Time Spiral Dragons or something.
Right.
So, like, for the longest time, I was a Boros mage. That's all I played was Boros because I started playing around that.
And yet he has an Azorius tattoo.
I have learned the correct way in life.
Oh, really?
Yes. So that's when it was for me, was learning the rules of EDH and dealing with the limitations on what you have to do to build your deck.
How about you, Chris? Aside from seeing us play with these giant stacks of cards.
You get to play any card.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Literally, that's the thing, is any card's pretty much legal. I mean, yeah, you got your ban list that the rules committee goes through, which I would love to be on, by the way, so I could ban, Cyclonic Rift. But anyways, I mean, you get so much more that you can do than you can do in other constructed formats.
For me, I think it was when I was first playing with that friend of mine, and he said, I have this pre-con, and we tried it out, and then he's like, and I built this deck, and he brought out a Risa Redeemed deck. And when I first played whatever pre-con it was, the Kalia one, there's a few dragons and angels in it, but I really didn't get it necessarily. He played that Reese deck, and I'm like, okay, what does it do? And I read it, I'm like, okay, I'll make an elf token. So he played it, made an elf token, and then like a doubling season came out, and he made 2 elf tokens, and he cast something else and made tokens. And I'm like, oh, this just does tokens. That's all this deck does is tokens. And he made a gazillion of them. And that's when I kind of realized, oh, this is a format where you can build a deck that's doing a really specific weird thing, and you can still win games. If you want to just build tokens, you can build a token deck and have that win a game. And I hadn't realized you could play Magic in that way before. I had just assumed you would just put a bunch of good cards together that hopefully interacted in some way, and that was it. And so realizing that, then I'm like, wow, I can do whatever crazy thing I can come up with. What keyword would be cool? What would be like an interesting interaction? And, you know, Prodigal Sorcerer, I'm like, I could build an all-pinger deck, and I could like...
That did not work out.
No. But like just that thing really, that's when I got hooked, when I was like, I could try to do whatever I want to do and dig through every Magic card ever and find these old ones that interact with my deck in a certain way. So that's when it clicked for me. What made you start the podcast? It's also from Matthias.
See, I knew it was coming up.
All right.
So, as we were saying, we used to eat at this restaurant downtown Eau Claire before we used to play EDH every week.
Yep.
And this was back when it was Dana, myself, and our friend Luke Witten.
Yep.
We were sitting there one day, you know, Chris was there, a bunch of us were there. And one day we're just like, why don't we just record this? Like, let's set up a mic and record it.
Because basically we'd go get a beer and have pizza or whatever it was before we would start playing. And so we'd like eat and drink from 5 till 6 and then go play games.
Yep.
But of course, since we're going to play that week,
We talk.
and we talk about Magic. And also, like, right now we have a Slack where we discuss stuff all week too, but like we didn't have that either. We all were friends, but we were kind of more acquaintances than anything, so we didn't talk during the week. So that was the point in time we'd be like, did you see that new card that got spoiled this week? And or I tried making this change in my deck or something. We'd talk that whole time. And then that thing, like, why don't we just record this and
Yep.
make it into and then let's make this into a podcast. And that's kind of where it spawned from.
Yep. And so that show ended.
Yep.
And then Dana and I wanted to keep going, so
Yeah.
we brought Chris aboard because Chris was always involved in all those conversations. He was on a couple of that old show's episodes,
Yeah.
so you know what? And here we are, 100 and
Jesus.
we just recorded episode 134 before this for the future.
There's a little bit of out of sequencing stuff going on, but yeah, that's crazy. So that was our initial inspiration. What's your favorite thing about having your own podcast?
This was asked by Cam.
Yep.
This is actually a really good question because I'm not sure what my answer is for this.
I will give mine here. So I thought about this one a little bit as well. My wife is a teacher. So when she has a bad day at work, and she has plenty of them, she teaches first grade, and there's plenty of days when just things go badly for whatever reason, that sucks. But she also has those days where, like, she can make a difference with a kid in their life, or a kid will come back that she had years ago and like tell her, thank you very much, you were a really good teacher, I didn't say anything to you back then, or a parent will say, you made first grade really good for my kid. You know, it doesn't happen every day, but like that happens enough for her that it offsets the bad days. My job, I work in IT, and my good day means the rich guy I work for got richer, and that's where it ends.
And you didn't get yelled at.
That's it. Right, I didn't get yelled at, and I helped the rich guy I work for get richer. There's no positive feedback really there or anything. I don't feel like there's no contribution or there's no feeling I made a difference or anything. Doing the podcast gives me a creative output, at least. I don't think I'm making the world a better place or anything, but I feel like I'm doing something that's creative and interesting and mentally stimulating for me in a way that I don't get from my job that she does. So this lets me, at the end of my day, do something that I feel like was fun and I put some of my brain power into in a way that was enjoyable that I don't get from work like she does. So that's what it is for me. It's a creative outlet.
Would you like to go, Chris?
This is how I win our contest. The listeners is my favorite thing about our podcast.
Yeah?
Oh, you sap. But I'm going to piggyback on that, actually. Unless, are you done? You want more?
I'll just piggyback off of you too.
Okay. My favorite thing is that I'm an extremely introverted person.
Yeah.
I'm a homebody. My tight group of friends, 2 of the 5 of them are here in front of me.
Right,
like
sure.
the other one is my roommate and like one other person.
Sure.
Having this podcast has made me become a better speaker. Like just talking,
Okay, yep.
whether it's on the show or at work or in public. But it's
Go back to episode 1 and you will see just how much
Yes.
Max actually used to talk.
0. I remember because it was super easy to edit. But at the same time, like now that we travel a lot for the show and go to all these random Magic Fest versus just the occasional once a year to Minneapolis,
Sure.
Being able to just walk up to strangers and say, hey, what decks are you playing? And can I play with you? And having people come up to me and introduce themselves saying, hey, I love your show. Can you play this deck against me because I really want to see it? It's broadened my personal skills as just being a person a lot, and that is a big thing from this show.
I like that. It's a good answer.
I do like that too.
Anything else from you on add here, Chris?
It's still the listeners, and I'm not just saying this to be, trying to win our contest or anything.
Because you're at 0. You're at 0, and I'm at 4.
Oh, I'm gonna change that when I get home. But the listeners in general, just because of the community that it builds. The community that with it, everyone talking on Slack. Yes, I don't talk very often, but I still go in and I read you guys' conversations. And some of them are wacky, and I get a kick out of it and just laugh. And then some of them are I'm just like, I don't really want to know about this.
All right. We have pick a current EDH deck you have and pair it with an alcoholic drink. What's the pairing and why?
Okay, I got one.
What do you got here, Max?
I'm going to go with my Dragon Lord Jamoka deck.
Okay.
I'm going to pick a nice, my favorite Woodford Reserve bourbon on the rocks.
Okay.
Because it's something you don't want to drink fast.
Sure.
This deck is not an aggro deck, even though I tend to play it that way. I've gotten much better at that, by the way.
I showed you how to play it.
Yep, and this 2 weeks ago, I almost won a game because of it. So it's something that you just like to sip on. You take it slow. It's supposed to last 20 turns, not something like a shot of Fireball where you just down it and go.
Right. Okay. The one that I was like looked at my decks and I'm like, I don't know what, and then the one that just popped into my head and it felt correct was my Kresh deck, and that's a pint of Guinness. That's a Jund deck. It's dark and has the head on the top, and it's stout and bitter and like not that bright. There's a song, I think it's Against Me, called Pints of Guinness Make You Strong. That's just what that deck like makes me think of, as Pints of Guinness Make You Strong. And big dumb Kresh with a giant pint, smashing it into somebody else's pint and taking a drink, and then just charging like a dummy straight ahead. So that's what my Kresh deck is. It's a pint of Guinness.
I absolutely have no answer for this question because I don't drink. So
I can answer this for you.
All right.
We're going to use your Alesha deck.
All right.
Okay.
And we're just going to take Coors Light. So, because you can just keep drinking them and they just keep coming
Keeps
back.
There we go. Okay, Chris Dorson here. What is your favorite card type? And we'll say, he didn't say why, but we'll say why is that too, of the card types in Magic. Max.
So I kind of need to say creature because my favorite thing about EDH is commander damage.
Sure.
But besides that, I think I would have to go with enchantments
Okay.
because they tend to impact the board pretty heavily, whether it's for everybody or just for myself. They're difficult to remove in most colors. And they're fun to do. They do fun things. Doubling season, copying all your tokens. Anthems, Dictate of Heliod, Rhystic Study, drawing you all the cards.
Okay. How about you, Chris?
lands.
Oh, jeez.
You like lands?
I love lands because they do everything you need them to do.
All right.
They let you play
They
the game.
kill,
Yeah.
they do everything. And, I might just be playing Tron this weekend, so I'm all about the lands.
The busted lands. For me, if you would have asked me a few years ago, I would have said enchantments. One of the first cards I ever got in a Magic deck was a Verdurn Enchantress way back in the day. And I remember being like, and I put it in the deck because I didn't have any cards, but I didn't realize how cool it was or how effective it was till I played it in a game and I I have an enchantment here, and I played an enchantment and drew a card. And I'm like, oh, that's an enchantment. I'll play that and draw it. And I chained through like 4 or 5 cards. I'm like, this is the greatest thing ever. This is the greatest card ever printed. So I've always liked enchantments because of that. And once I came back to Magic, and I'm like, I could put a Verdurn Enchantress deck. And I'm like looking up, and I'm like, but there's also a Mesa Enchantress and a Core Spirit Dancer and that was like before we got the Seder Wayfinder and stuff. But I'm like, and Argolthian Enchantress, like, there's a bunch of Enchantresses now. This is the greatest thing ever. However, the last couple of years, I've really started to like playing artifacts a lot. Now that I've thought about it, I have a Glissa deck that's really heavily into artifacts. My Vela deck is very heavy into artifacts. They have the best interaction. Like, I always think of artifacts and enchantments as kind of being very similar, kind of like instant sorceries are, except for there's so much more stuff you can, for the most part, do with artifacts. Enchantments tend to be relatively static. There are some that have activated abilities, but there are so many artifacts that do so many dumb, weird, wonky things, and there's so many loops and recursive things and so much interaction that I've really started to turn into a fan of artifacts, particularly in artifact-centric decks. So that's kind of become my favorite card type, I think, and I wouldn't have said that a couple years ago. Let's do a couple more here. We're definitely not going to get through all of these, but we'll do a couple more. Kevin Welasek, and I certainly said that
Yeah, you
Totally
did.
butchered that.
Kevin Wilczek.
Wilczek, all right. Kevin Wilczek. What is your all-time favorite commander? Do you have the deck, and do you play it? And if not, why is that?
Chris is ready to go here.
What's your favorite, Chris? Silver Queen.
Sliver Queen, by far. And the reason, I do not play this anymore.
Okay.
I actually sold my Sliver Queen
Yep.
before she spiked, which really aggravates me. But the reason that I love this is because I knew that it was a super powerful deck. And I love the fact of flipping it over and becoming a 3-on-1 game and seeing if I could still win the game.
Sure.
Cool.
How about you, Max?
My all-time favorite commander is one I no longer run,
Okay.
and it's Tajik, Blade of the Legion.
The backstabbing man himself.
That's exactly why. I have enough. It is the one commander I've taken. I think I had 6 different iterations of that deck in its lifespan. I don't play it because it's Boros. Granted, Boros has gotten a lot better since I took that deck apart about a year ago. But in the end, it's just the deck that I had the longest next to my current lineup.
Okay.
I like the battalion mechanic. I like that it becomes a 7/7. It becomes a 3-turn clock with it.
It's tough to remove. 'cause
It's tough to remove because it's indestructible, and it's Boros. People just assume you're not going to win the game, and then you just outlast everybody.
Sure. Mine would still be Glissa. I mentioned that. She is still my favorite.
Yeah.
Do you have also from Kevin, do you have a favorite set/block/plane? And if so, why?
Ooh, I have 2 answers to this question.
Okay.
My first answer is my favorite set would be Return to Ravnica, or that block.
Okay.
Because that's really when I really dove into Commander, was
Okay.
that
Yep.
block. So it's just like a nostalgia thing to me. Otherwise, I love the Shadowmoor, Eventide, that plane and block, because all the really fun Commander cards come from that set.
There's a ton
sets,
of good stuff in Lorwyn.
and they don't get reprinted.
Yeah. How about you, Chris?
I don't really think I do.
No? Okay.
Not that I can think of off the top of my head.
When was the last time Lightning Bolt was printed?
Core M12?
It is a Magic Fest promo that you received.
Oh, yeah.
Okay, so
yeah.
M11.
I liked Ixalan of the most recent sets. Although, actually, you know what? I like Ixalan for the most recent original sets. I think it's a fun fantasy world. You have vampires as conquistadors and pirates and dinosaur tribesmen, and it's just bonkers. And I think that's a cool, fun. It's colorful and bright and enjoyable. And I think I really wanted that after Amonkhet is a downer, and Innisrod's a downer, and Battle for Zendikar was a downer. I wanted something bright and colorful and crazy. So Ixalan hit a lot of beats for me there at that point in time. I'm not sure it's my favorite plane, but I was glad to go there. I'm totally on board with Lorwyn. I love everything about Lorwyn. I didn't play during it, and supposedly it wasn't a lot of fun to play Standard then. But as a
It was fairies everywhere.
But as a Commander player, there's a gazillion great cards, and I like that kind of vibe, which is what I'm hoping we get from Throne of Eldraine as well. I'm
Yeah.
kind of getting that same feeling. So I'm looking forward to Throne for that reason. Dominaria, I will always love Dominaria because it's the first plane I ever played Magic on, and that return to Dominaria last year is almost a perfect set, I think. That's an amazing Standard set. Nostalgically, it has great lore stuff. It brought back a bunch of great characters. That's probably my favorite Magic set we've had that I've played in recent history. So
So the next one comes from Mr. Minister of Impediments at my_junk drawer on Twitter. Have you had a chance to go back and follow up with the decks you've done and see what changes were made?
we haven't.
Sort of.
Yeah, well, we revisited changes we've made recently, I guess.
Well, I'm more thinking the fact that some of these we've done are for local players.
Oh, sure.
So they've made the changes. We see them week in and
cool.
week out.
Gotcha. I thought you meant the ones we did.
No,
our
like
decks.
the decks
Gotcha.
you play episodes.
Yeah, so we've seen the decks change, or people have contacted us, said, I made this change, I did that.
Yeah.
But you know what? That actually might be not a bad show to do down the road, where we just contact a bunch of people and just get them to send us a paragraph saying what they did or that kind of thing. It's not a bad idea.
No, thank you for the idea.
Yeah, no, that's cool.
He also asked, do you plan on doing another build-off with a theme all of you aren't familiar with, such as group hug?
I will totally do a group hug build off with you guys.
Just to see Dana build the deck.
Man, I mean, it might be a fun challenge to try to do something
Yeah.
that wouldn't be...
Or each of us pick something that's not in our wheelhouse or
Right,
something.
assign it to somebody else. Yeah, that would
Yeah.
be something we could do on the road, too. That's not a bad idea as well.
So the next set of questions come from Agro Chase at I'm not Chase on Twitter.
Okay.
Dana,
Yes.
if your EDH Rec podcast comrades play the terrific twosome of Commander Central in a two-headed giant game, who would play the saltiest combo to guarantee the win? And this was also followed up. We'll answer that one first.
Man, it wouldn't be... Here's the interesting thing. Between the two sets of co-hosts, I do have... Matt and Chris are kind of similar. Matt used to play relatively competitively back in the day. He's day 2 GPs before. He plays vintage and stuff. He's a real deal player. But when he plays Commander, he's kind of a teddy bear. And you are to a degree too, Chris, despite being the more competitive of the two
Yep.
players. Joey, who is not a competitive player, does play some cutthroat EDH.
He's a dirty scumbag.
He is. Max, and clearly Max is as well. So it would be between Max or Joey, I think. Joey's not above all kinds of shenanigans, and Max is willing to do it too to seal that win. So I don't know, but it would be between one of those two.
If we had a playoff with them, I guarantee I could talk Max into us playing a two-headed giant, just
Yeah, buddy.
full on turn 3 combo winning.
I suppose and you've played competitive two-headed giant, so Chris would have the edge up. So given that choice, I think I think Max and Joey would be the most cutthroat, but Chris has that experience, and I think
Chris would build our decks right.
yeah, I would give you guys the edge, particularly because of that reason.
Because we're his real show. So this question was followed up by Paul Kittner at pkittner13 with, what decks would Commander Central run? Do you think? We're not asking about EDH Rec. What decks do you think you and Chris and I would run?
So Chris does have, like I said, some understanding of two-headed giant. So he would come up with something with some synergy. One person playing blue, one person probably running the gas, and one person playing the defense, I would guess.
I know what we would play.
Oh, I know exactly what I'd
Something
build.
with black, so you could run scheming symmetry.
Ooh.
So what would you do, Chris? What would be the answer then?
One of us would be playing Najila 5-color, and the other person would be playing mono red Zergo. And we would kill you on turn 4.
aggro, just
Yep,
aggro,
just aggro it out.
Aggro warriors.
Okay, who cares about defense? You're just going all in.
Well, then Najila's got all the defense built
Yeah.
in, but Zergo's just going blah, 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 blah.
All right.
That's exactly what I knew you were going to say. I knew you were going to say Najila and another aggro deck.
And that's because you've played that
Yes.
combo somewhere before.
I've
Okay.
lost to that
It
combo.
is super hard to stop in a two-headed giant game.
Okay. So there's the answer there. So we actually didn't. We said we were going to have questions left over and do a second show. We didn't know where we were going to stop. So I think we will stop there for this one, and we'll come back and revisit the rest of these maybe next month.
Yep, we have plenty more, so we will get to them, everybody. Thank you for sending your questions
Yes,
in.
thank you very much. That was a lot of fun. Yeah, because we're going to want to break because we have at least one Commander review show coming. At least one. I mean, maybe we'll wind up doing 2 for that. We're going to have.
Not.
We're
We
going to
don't
have
have time to record too.
We're going to have brawl decks that are going to have a ton of Commander playable cards in them. And Throne of Eldraine at this point is, I don't know how, 6
6
weeks away. So like we're going to need some kind of a palate cleanser away from review shows. So we'll come back to hit the rest of these questions on the road. Thank you very much, like Max said, for writing into us, though. That was actually a lot of fun to do. I appreciate that. Thanks for editor Ken Peddle. You can find him on Twitter at LOAD3R. Thank you much for our podcast theme, which is Retro Future Dirty by Kevin MacLeod. You can find me on Twitter at Dana Roach. You can find Max on Twitter at CMDRCentral_Max. And you can find Chris at WiseASquishy1. We'll be back next week. Until then, I am Dana.
I'm Max.
And I'm Chris.